live now. Hello everyone, welcome to the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology here in the heart of Cambridge. It's a grey, rainy day, but we're in the museum, so it's okay. My name's Rich, I work for the University of Cambridge Museums. Behind the camera is Hannah, who's giving you a little wave. She also works for the University of Cambridge Museums. In the background you might be able to see Jenny waving. We'll find out more about Jenny in a minute. So we're doing another live stream. You may have seen some previous ones we've done in the past. Quite often we go behind the scenes and we can hear the workings of the museum. But today we're not behind the scenes, we're actually in the museum. Mainly because there's a particular case we're going to be talking about today, and also it's a Monday, so it's closed, so don't try and come here after this. You can come for the rest of the week. And today is the beginning of Green GB Week, which is when organisations and individuals from up and down the country are talking about climate change. And we thought, well, we can do that here in the museums, particularly here in archaeology and anthropology. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about this particular case in relation to climate change. So let's go over and see Jenny. And Hannah, you can have a look around the museum. There's lots to see. Lots of things that are very high up. Just don't bump into it. No pressure.
Here we are.
You're back.
I'm back.
Right, so brilliant. So, hello, Jenny.
Hello.
So, Jenny, you are the Learning and Outreach...
Education and Outreach Assistant.
I knew I'd get that wrong. Tell us, what does that mean here in the museum?
Well, it's sort of, it's actually two jobs. So there's one which is Education and Outreach Assistant for the whole of the museum, and that means teaching school groups that come in, that means organising family events during the half term, during school holidays. And then the other half of my time is sort of education and outreach specifically to do with the cases that we're looking at today. So this is part of a project called Pacific Currents. It's a heritage lottery funded project, and it was a refurbishment of these Pacific Island cases and an associated outreach program. So I'm part of that associated outreach program to the sort of Cambridge area.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you. And when you say refurbishment,
yes.
What does that involve when we're looking at these cases?
Oh, good question. So it meant sort of over the course of several months, all of the sort of objects in these cases, there's sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 cases down here that were emptied, and the curator and the sort of collections assistants and collections manager looked at what we have to do with sort of Pacific Islands in our collection and rethought how we were going to display that, what things should be on display. There was a lot of conservation work that went on with objects, so they were looking their best when they were put out again. And very excitingly, I think, was this particular case, which is sort of brand new, and it really addresses sort of contemporary issues in the Pacific today, which I think is really important in an anthropology museum. Sometimes people come to an anthropology museum and they think it's all about the past, it's all about history, whereas obviously these cultures and groups and people are alive today. They're still very vibrant communities.
Yeah. Brilliant, great. So it's really funny because before we started this, we were talking about the sort of things we might ask. I didn't say what about the cases and what the refurbishment meant, so it's great. Well done, you answered that really well. So we're talking about this particular case, and well, shall we open it up?
Yeah, why
This
not?
is a bit I was really excited about because obviously we always come to museums and we see the objects behind the glass. So we're being treated today.
Yes, indeed. So here we go, very dramatic. Fabulous big door, goes all the way back.
Excellent.
There we go.
Great. Right, so I won't dive in or anything. So we can see lots of very intriguing things
Yes.
in here. And the thing that particularly catches my eye, well, they all catch my eye, but this helmet.
Yes.
It is a helmet,
It
right?
is a helmet, yes, well done.
It looks particularly interesting.
Yes,
I mean,
it's
it
beautiful.
could be a hat, I suppose.
Yeah, it could be, definitely, but it's absolutely a helmet. It comes from Kiribati, which is, originally it comes from the Kiribati culture. And Kiribati is a group of 33 coral atolls in the Pacific Ocean. They're spread out over a sort of area of 3.5 million square kilometres, which is about the size of India.
Oh,
So
wow.
massive island nation, group of island nations. And only sort of a population of about 100,000 people. So lots of people spread out over that sort of large amount of the Pacific. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you a map because sometimes
do.
it's really hard to figure these things, to picture these things.
I hold this side.
Yeah, do. This is my beautiful map. I love this map. I honestly love this map. So we've got Australia down there, New Zealand here, and this is Kiribati up here. And so that sort of gives you an idea of the area that we're talking about.
It's quite astonishing, actually, to see this many sort of islands in this area.
Absolutely. So I've heard a number that there's 25,000 islands in the Pacific Ocean,
Right.
and only about half of those actually have people on them. So only
Right.
about 10,000 islands.
Yeah.
So yes, it is an extraordinary large area, a lot of diversity, sort of different cultures, different environments, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So in relation to this helmet,
Yes.
did you say we were talking about this?
Exactly, this area here, Kiribati.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. All right.
Pop it back down.
Thank you for
That's
that.
all right.
And I did forget to say earlier on, if anyone has any questions, if you type them in the comments, then Hannah behind the camera will ask them, and Jenny will try and answer them. I certainly won't. So yeah, do ask any questions, or throw us some likes, do some shares, whatever you fancy doing. Back to the helmet.
Yes.
How on earth is that made?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. And
good.
so, this is actually a modern helmet. So it was made only a couple of years ago. And one of the reasons it was made was because a lot of museums have sort of historical Kiribati armour in their collections, and nobody was entirely certain how these things had been made because they stopped being made in about the 19th century. They haven't been made over the course of the 20th century. And so a lot of this sort of knowledge about how this armour was made had been lost. I've got a picture here of some Kiribati warriors in their finery. So you can see it's not just the helmet. You've got this amazing armour which is made out of coconut fibre as well, and these incredible swords which are sort of decorated with shark's teeth. So this sort of armour stopped being made in the 19th century. Most people say the reason is sort of due to missionaries, due to colonialism. Kiribati used to be a British colony, and so when the British arrived and the missionaries arrived, there was this sort of this attempt to stop the people fighting, sort of to try and rein them in and put in new laws, which didn't allow for this sort of traditional warfare. So, anyway, getting back to how the helmet was made, when the conservators looked at one of the historical helmets that we had in our collection, they noticed that there was sort of sand on it.
Okay.
And so what they think actually happened is that you would have to find a puffer fish or a porcupine fish that had sort of expanded, so it was doing its sort of defensive move, and you would spear it when it had expanded, and then you would bury it in the sand, and that would let it dry out. And so when it's dried out, it becomes quite hard, and it stays in that kind of puffed out position.
Blimey.
Yes.
This is so childish, but to me, I feel like if you speared a pufferfish when it's expanded, it would burst like a balloon.
Like a balloon, yeah.
But no.
Apparently not.
No.
Apparently not. I mean, I haven't done it myself, but this is what I've been told is how it works. So yes, and then you can sort of see inside it, at the bottom, it's got this sort of a lining that's sort of been made out of pandanus leaves, and that sort of makes sure that it's not so itchy or scratchy on the inside of your head.
Yeah. Right, I see.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it is quite something to look at, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is.
And obviously at the top here, is the actual
the
tail of the
fins,
fish.
exactly.
Fins,
yeah, exactly. And it's, I mean, I had a school group in a few weeks ago, and I had this conversation with one of the students who kept saying to me, but what's it made out of? And I was like, well, it's a puffer fish. And she said, no, but what's it made out of? And I said, well, it's a puffer fish. It's made out of a puffer fish. And we kept going back and forth because she just couldn't quite believe that you could do this with a fish. She just assumed that it was made out of plastic, and it was made to look like a puffer fish.
And sorry, you may have said a bit earlier,
right.
Is this ceremonial or is this actually meant to protect your head?
Really good question again. So actually, I'll show you. So this is sort of a shark tooth dagger. You could get really big ones, and this is what the warriors would be fighting with. And yes, when I show this to the sort of students, they always go, but could you kill someone with that? And the answer is no. And the aim wasn't to kill someone with a knife or sword like this. The aim was just to sort of
wound.
Thank you, that's the word. Okay. I was thinking of something much... Yes, just wound, exactly. And in fact, if you killed someone during this fight, you would actually have to pay retribution to the wounded party in the form of land. So you weren't supposed to kill someone when you were fighting. Wounding them would be enough.
Okay, that answers a lot of questions for me, because actually in your collection you have a lot of very intricate, sort of interesting looking weapons that don't look necessarily practical, but look very flamboyant. That's probably the wrong word. Yeah. Hannah, you're saying...
We have a question that actually picks up on this. So the question is, isn't the dried pufferfish very brittle to use as a helmet?
Oh, yes. I imagine so. I think so. And again, it's not meant to necessarily protect your head from sort of something hitting you, but it does look very impressive. I think that it is quite... it would obviously provide a degree of protection, but yes, it's not going to protect you from absolutely everything. Yeah,
it's going to stop someone hitting you on the head with their hands, I guess.
Yeah,
that would hurt.
That would hurt the head, definitely. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you. That is really fascinating. Is there what else would you like to show us in here?
Well, I'd really like, actually, the reason that this is in the case is really interesting as well. If that's all right.
No, please do.
Because I feel like some people might not understand why this is connected to climate change.
Of course, yeah.
So basically, like we said before, Kiribati is island nation, lots of coral atolls, so very low in the water, so very, very vulnerable to sea level rises due to climate change. And this modern armour, it isn't exactly the same as the sort of historical armour that I showed you before. I don't know if you can see, the helmet is a very different shape, and that's because it's a different fish. So this is a porcupine fish, and this one here is a puffer fish. Now the reason that the armour is different is that this armour, even though it was made by Kiribati artists, it was made in New Zealand. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of the Kiribati community that are currently living in New Zealand. A lot of people are migrating because of the threat of climate change, and this is sort of a symbol of that migration in many ways. We've had some Kiribati researchers come in and see this object, and they see, what they say is that it's both hopeful and tragic. So it's obviously tragic because it's showing sort of these changes in the Kiribati culture, changes that are happening not through any fault of the Kiribati people, but that are happening. But it's also hopeful in that even it shows their resilience, even though this is happening to them, they're sort of wanting to continue. They're moving to other places and they're keeping this culture alive.
Yeah, right, that's really interesting and a really important message as well. Yeah. Great, thank you. So, what should we talk about next?
Oh, good question. Maybe the necklace in here, because that's also, it's got a sort of theme of resilience, I think. So I don't know if you can see that. down there. It's this beautiful necklace. It's been made out of red clay.
Right, it's a lovely colour, isn't it?
It is, yes. And it was made in Fiji. So all of the materials there were come from Fiji. 100% Fijian made, and made by a company called, I hope I say this right, Vanua Clay. And it was made for the COP23 conference, which was last year, 2017. And basically it's the UN's climate change conference. And the reason that this is all Fijian is because that was the first time that the UN's climate change conference was hosted or presided over by a Pacific island nation. So it was held in Bonn in Germany, not in Fiji, but the presidency and the running of the conference was presided over by Fiji.
Okay, so a significant moment then.
Yes.
For
Absolutely. So the idea was that if sort of a Pacific island nation had presidency, maybe that would give sort of more urgency to the climate change talks, because that country's got first-hand experience of what's happening at the moment. So I don't know if you saw the little sort of symbol on the necklace. I'll show you it here again. So this is what's on the necklace here, and it's the symbol for COP23. It was designed by a Fijian designer named Maria Rona Sekiguchi, and this wave is meant to symbolise Tropical Cyclone Winston. I don't know if you remember Tropical Cyclone Winston. I certainly didn't until I started researching this.
I can't say I do.
Yeah, so it happened in February 2016, and it was the most intense tropical cyclone ever recorded in the southern hemisphere, and the most intense one to ever reach landfall. And it did reach landfall in Fiji, and it wreaked a lot of havoc. There were hundreds of thousands of people losing their homes, and so it was a really important thing that they wanted to have as the symbol for COP23. It was this sort of direct experience of climate change and wanting to acknowledge that.
Excellent, yeah. So a clever, a good piece of design there, you would say. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
This is interesting in that it's a modern piece.
Yes.
So, and actually, a few of the things in this cabinet are. So it's just interesting in that you're collecting things now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Rather than some of the things here are obviously ancient.
Yes, definitely. So I think pretty much everything in this case is modern. So the helmet that we saw before was actually one of the researchers connected to the museum, Dr. Ali Clark, actually commissioned this armour to be made specifically for the museum, and it was a research project as well as sort of having something at the end to be on display, so that we could learn about this armour and how it was made. Yes, so there's lots of things in here that are modern, have been collected only in the last few years.
Great. Right, well, did you want to tell us anything else about the necklace before I try and point?
That's all right. I forgot to mention the red clay. It's not just beautiful, it's also significant. So clay and pottery is really important to Fijian culture. Traditionally, it has been. But in this particular case, the reason that it's been chosen sort of for a climate change conference is that it's sort of a sustainable material. So if any of those beads break, for example, you can just kind of make a new one. And the material, if it breaks and you need to throw it away, it's not going to cause, problems with landfill or sort of that sort of thing. So the idea is to highlight sustainability in this necklace. And also to highlight resilience, because if those beads break, you can make a new one.
Sure,
You can repair it quite easily.
So again, a very important message in the story of this object.
Definitely.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's all right.
My eyes are drawn to many things, as I said, but particularly this picture.
Yes, it's
or
amazing,
painting.
Isn't it?
It is extraordinary. It's got very vibrant, strong colours in it, but also depicts some interesting scenes or scenarios.
Definitely.
Can you tell us a bit about this?
I can. So it's an artwork it is a painting by a Papua New Guinean artist named Simon Gende. it's got a fantastic name, which I can never quite remember, but I'll try and get it right. So it's the disappointing lack of development as a result of the liquefied natural gas project, the enormous liquefied natural gas project. Sorry.
Excellent. I was reading it down here at the same
Exactly.
time. You did very well.
Thank you. So it's this fantastic long name. So Simon Gende is really interesting. A lot of his paintings, the titles of his artworks, he actually takes from newspaper articles. So he takes the top of the title of the newspaper article, and then he makes a painting around that.
Right.
So that's why that's got that sort of, I don't know, it sounds bureaucratic language to me.
Yeah.
And what he's trying to do is sort of, I guess, make that more vibrant, come alive a little bit more, take that sort of slightly dull bureaucratic language and make it come alive in this artwork. So what he's talking about, I don't know if you know, do you know anything about
Well,
liquid?
only what you very briefly told me before,
Okay.
so not wanting to give anything away like we rehearsed this. So, no, tell me as if I knew nothing.
All right, fine, good. So liquefied natural gas, it's an alternative sort of energy source that you could use instead of, say, coal. Natural gas is definitely a good alternative to coal. It's sort of, when you burn it, it's got 30 to 50% less carbon dioxide emissions. So, you know, that sounds great.
Yeah.
The problem with natural gas is when you transport it. So if you're going down a pipeline, for example, with the gas, what can be emitted through leaks in that pipeline is methane, which is actually a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So even though you get less emissions when you're burning it, during the process of getting natural gas you can create a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
Liquefied natural gas is where, if you are sort of wanting to get natural gas to a place that you can't get pipelines to. So if you've got the natural gas in one country and you have to go across an ocean to get the natural gas to the country that wants it, then you would use liquefied natural gas. So you cool it down, cool the gas down until it's in a liquid state, and that makes it much easier to transport.
Okay, I see.
But unfortunately, in that production process, cooling it down to a liquid state also creates methane.
Sure.
So you've got sort of extra problems with the liquefied natural gas.
So there's an argument as to
how green it is.
Yeah, how green that is compared to the alternatives.
Absolutely. I mean, my own bias, unfortunately, is like anything with emissions is no good.
Yeah.
But certainly other people see it as an alternative, as a good bridge, a bridge fuel, basically,
Sure.
until renewables are more viable, that you can use this.
Okay.
So what's going on here is that Simon Gende is not necessarily talking about the environmental impacts, he's talking about social impacts in this painting. So the liquefied natural gas project was really meant to, there were all these big promises that were made by the company about the amazing benefits to the local people from the project. It was meant to double Papua New Guinea's economy. The household income, average household income, was meant to increase by 85%. Employment was meant to increase by something ridiculous as well. I can't remember them all. And it didn't happen.
Right.
So some reports came out earlier this year which back up Simon Gende's painting, basically. So the economy grew by 10%, I think. Household income fell. Employment fell. So what he's showing here is sort of...
Is how that affected the people
exactly
there. So, I mean, you can see some interest. It's interesting there's traditional dress.
Yes.
I mean, is that a statement on the fact they may be sort of losing that side of their culture?
It's really interesting. Yeah, to me it looks like... I've got a few ideas, I don't know. Like, it looks like maybe this sort of traditional culture, the people following this traditional culture, they're sort of just walking out of the picture.
Right, yes.
Maybe they're leaving, maybe it's losing that culture. I wonder also if it might just be resettlement. There was a lot of, there is resettlement during these projects where people can't live in the lands, the areas that they used to live in because of the project. the reason I'm not sure if he's lamenting the end of traditional culture is because, I don't know if you can see this writing.
Yes, yeah.
So it's in Tokpisin. I can't read that, but I do have the label. And so it says, Papua New Guinea now has the LNG project, but where has the money gone? The people have faced lots of hardship, the life hasn't changed, and we still live like our ancestors. So in some ways, he's sort of saying, actually, he seems like he would have liked, you know, modernity, and some of the things that were promised.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting part of the painting as to what he's saying there with these people leaving.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things I love about it is how it's quite open to interpretation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a lot going on in there.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Excellent. So, Hannah, have there been any other questions or anything? No, we're okay. All right, well, I think that's possibly the end.
All right, no
so
worries.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for your time. That's really, really interesting. We're going to be back later on at 3 p.m. today. So we're going to go to the Polar Museum and talk to Charlotte, and we're going to be looking at more fascinating objects in their museum as well. If you have any sort of questions, if you're not watching this live and you have some questions later, perhaps this week, just put the questions in the comments, and we'll pass them to Jenny, and Jenny's promised to answer them. So
I'll find someone who can answer them for you.
Indeed, yeah, that's the alternative. But yeah, thank you for everyone who's watching, and we'll see you later on.